Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. We are very, very pleased and honored to have with us Tabita Rezaire, Yussef Agbo-Ola, Joël Vacheron, and Aouefa Amoussouvi, and all of you that are listening to us, also our colleagues in the call. This activity is part of Calabash Nebulosa de Calabash exhibition, a public program. The exhibition has been curated by Chus Martinez and can be visited at the museum, the Museo Nacional Thyssen-Bornemisza, until the 12th of January. This activity has been conceived together with Organismo, Art in Applied Critical Ecologies, the independent study program initiated by TVA 21 Academy and the Museum Thyssen-Bornemisza. And that is why you will see a group of fellows present in the call that will contribute to the conversation with questions or comments at the end. But all of you listening and attending and present to this conversation are more than welcome and invited to share thoughts, comments, or questions in the chat as well. We will read them to add it to the conversation. To start, we are going to listen to Tabita Rezaire. The artist it constitutes the exhibition. Tabita Rezaire's path as an artistic devotee, doula, and cacao farmer is so geared towards manifesting the divine in herself and beyond. As an eternal seeker, Tabita's yearning for connection finds expression in her cross-dimensional practices, which envision network sciences, organic, electronic, and spiritual, as healing technologies to serve the shift towards heart consciousness. Embracing digital, corporeal, and ancestral memory, she digs into scientific imaginaries and mystical realms to tackle the colonial bonds, energetic misalignments that affect the songs of our body, minds, spirits. Tabita's work is rooted in time-spaces where technology and spirituality merge as fertile ground to nourish visions for connection and emancipation. Through screen interfaces, healing circles, and line stewardship, her offerings aim to nurture our collective growth and expand our capacity for togetherness. Tabita is based in French Guiana, where she is caring for Amacaba, a center for the arts on earth, body, and sky. Her offerings have been shared widely from different places around the world. Tabita is going to introduce some of the works that constitute the exhibition. And I want to say also a word to our colleague Marina. She cannot join today. Well, I will try my best to accompany this fascinating reunion of voices. Thanks so much for being here. And Tabita, please, we are pleased to hear you.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you for joining today. I feel a bit weak, but I'll try my best to share what I can about the show. So I can say different things. The exhibition is called Calabash Nebula, and actually, so this is the name of the actual nebula in the sky. I mean, it has been called like this by some astronomer. And there's a beautiful photograph that was taken by a Hubble telescope of this nebula, and has the form of a calabash, actually. The calabash, it's a fruit, like a gourd. And so they named this nebula the name of Calabash. And me, I love Calabash. And so when I found out about this nebula, I was like, oh, wow, what a sign. And what's so beautiful, okay, I go a little bit geeky if you don't know. So a nebula is it's basically a part of the cosmos. It's a nursery for new stars. It's like a gaseous cluster of gas, where that's the most fertile part of the universe where new stars are born. And so it's like a pregnant belly of the cosmos. Basically, it's the pregnant belly of the universe. That's what a nebula is. And what's even more beautiful and profound is that how do we get a nebula? You get a nebula after the death of a star. So I'm sorry, but that really moves me very deep. It's like when a star dies, like us, like our sun, when it's going to die, you know, potentially, I mean, it can turn into a black hole, it can turn into different things, or it can turn into a nebula. So in a way to get that fertility, like that cosmic fertility, you first need death, you know, and you need the death of a star to produce the environment that's going to be fertile to born new stars, you know. And so I feel that could be a resume of my whole life, of my whole work practice, of all of my aspiration. It's like to find, you know, the thread that ties and binds like life and death together, and to see how both sustain each other and how both depend on each other. And I think, you know, my relationship to ancestor and like ancestral knowledge, wisdom is really related, even like cosmically on each scale. Me being a farmer, you know, you have to like tend to the soil, you know, maybe some trees need to die to grow, fertilize the soil so that new life can grow, like taking care, like the whole cycle of life. Basically, that's what my life is about, trying to, I don't know, be of service to this infinite cycle, you know, of birth, growth, death, and again in many different dimensions of existence. So I guess I could say that. What else can I say? I can say a bit about the calabash, maybe why I love it so much, or maybe, okay, sorry, I can talk about the works also. So one of the main work of the show is called Désastre. And Désastre, I think, I mean, if you speak French or Spanish, you might hear the joke or maybe the linguistic. So Désastre, it means disaster in English, but it also means a star or a celestial body. You know, it's like both. Like, I mean, you get it if you speak Spanish. And so I guess, yeah, I don't know if I can say an interest in disasters, you know, but I feel in order to grow or heal or transform, one must face the catastrophe that we carry, you know, the burden that is ours, you know. So I think very much the work is about this, but, you know, in the context of our relationship to the sky. So I did a series of work that looked or explored the relationship between the Earth and the cosmos, and how people throughout the ages in different areas of the world have connected to the beyond, and which technology they have used. So this work in particular take as a central point French Guiana. So that's the country I live. So for those that don't know, French Guiana is a small land in South America near Brazil and Suriname. So it's in the middle of the Amazonian forest, and it is the only land that is not yet independent in South America. So we are still French. French passport, French everything. So still waiting for independence. Hopefully it will come. And so in French Guiana, it's also the home to the European spaceport. So basically, it's from French Guiana that a lot of rockets, satellites are launched. And the new, so those who follow a bit astronomy, like the new James Webb telescope, you know, that replaced Hubble, like just was launched from French Guiana. And so the work look at this, in a way, like weaving disciplines of how one can connect or travel through the cosmos. So from Western understanding, you know, high-tech technology of like sending rockets, polluting the cosmos, or, you know, sending huge industrial machines that are very extractivist in nature, you know, and using that to observe, to calculate, to try and understand and grasp a sense of the unknown that the cosmos is, and weaving this with traditional cosmogonies from French Guiana. So French Guiana is very diverse. So in terms of population, you have indigenous nations who were there originally, and then you have the descendant of Africans who were displaced, and some of them escaped during or even before slavery. we call it the Maroon communities. And so they retained a lot of their African language, rituals, traditions, and have their own cosmogonies. And then, the people who survived, slavery, which are called now Creoles, have also their own culture. So it's looking at all of those cultures and how they have different stories and traditions and technologies to travel through different realms of existence and dimension. For instance, forest spirits, going to certain sacred trees which are inhabited by some spirits, and through them, finding access to other dimension, or maybe shamanic vision in some indigenous communities, or sound, or different rituals that one can do, or plenty stories, of mythical creature, water spirits. So basically, it goes through different interfaces, like the forest as an interface, the water as another interface to cross dimension, like stones. So also there's a stone circle in just outside the border in the Amazon, the outside border of French Guiana. And I did a series of work on megalithic architecture as ancient observatories. So I did some in looking at the stone circles of Senegal and Gambia, and then Zimbabwe and South Africa, and now this time in the Amazon, and looking at how, why people put stone together, and potentially being some sort of a technology to connect, to other spheres of existence. So basically, in a resume, that's kind of what the work is about. And take the shape of a carbe. So we have in the indigenous nation. Okay, just tell me when my time is up, please, because I'm just talking. There's the Kalinya, Wayana, Wayampi, Teko, Palikur, Apalai nations. And so in the Wayana, they have what is called the, if I translate, it means the home sky. So it's basically Malwana, it's called in native language. It's a painting that it's put under the traditional architecture, like roof leaf that we call karbe. And it's like a disc painted with a mythical creature painted. And basically, the history or the traditional history of why people put this, it's basically back in the days, there was this, I don't know how you call caterpillar, who used to devour the people in the village. So everyone was scared each time this huge, gigantic, it was two-head caterpillar would come, it would eat everybody. And so one day there was this elder in the village. He was on his boat, fishing, and he heard a traditional song, deep in the forest. And so he was curious, he took his canoe towards the song, following the rhythm. And then it led him to a bamboo forest. He walked through the bamboo until he saw a huge kapok tree. Kapok tree is a very sacred tree in French Guiana. And he went into the tree, and inside the tree, it was like he was in the karbe, in the traditional homes. And inside, the spirit of the tree told him, look here. So he saw all the water spirit, the caterpillar with two heads, so many monsters, and divine creatures. And the spirit told him, when you go home, you have to paint a disc and put it on the top like you see inside this tree, and that will protect your people. And for me, this story is it's so beautiful because it's I don't know what I'm sure you can understand the meaning in so many different ways, but what I took from it is in order to protect the people, for them not to be devoured, and eaten by that monster, they literally had to include the monster into their home, give it to space within their community, within themselves, within their most private, intimate space, the home, the collective home. And so I guess maybe the work is trying to do this, It's how can we bring the monster in? How can we give it a space, include it? And I guess many of my works do that, looking at the historical trauma, environmental trauma, all the, I don't know, the violence, the domination, all the ism that we face, you know, and we carry, how do we give it a space? How do we face it, you know? And I guess that's how do we bring the monster home, you know? Because avoiding it, it doesn't lead to protection, you know? So in a way, this work is like, and in that case, the monster is like the separation from spirit, the separation from that duality that exists between, okay, science, spirituality, between the earth and the cosmos, between our ways of, you know, understanding different dimensions, because nowadays, even in French Guiana, we still have a lot of traditional knowledge, you know, it's still very much alive. The younger generation, many people don't believe in like spirits of the forest, you know, they're like, oh, that's stories of the elders, you know, people, you know, a lot of people, they're still scared, you know, to go in the forest at night or to swim in certain places. They'll say, ah, no, but they won't really like I don't know, it's like everywhere, you know, it's disappearing slowly, you know? So I guess it's also the works is I don't know, homage or reverence is a way of like keeping a little flame alive somewhere, you know, to honor those wisdom. Like, hey, here at least within the space, you know, like trees speaks, water spirits are real, and here's a space we can listen to what they have to say, you know. So against the monster of capitalism, of like industrialization, of land exploitation, extraction, and also of like the disaster that's happening within the Amazonian context, you know, with the forest and how we can really like be guardian of the forest. So I guess all of this is part of the thing or the work. So that I can say. And then maybe before Yussef, maybe we'll speak in more details, you know. But there's also the two other work. There are more devotional work for Yemonja, which is a Orisha. It's a water deity, a water spirit from originally from the Yoruba people that live now in Nigeria, Benin, Togo, and it's basically an Orisha is it's like an aspect of the divine, or it's like a force of nature. And this one is like the divine as a mother. It's really a deity of motherhood, of community, of the water, the fertility, and yeah, the power of motherhood, really in all its way, not just to mother your own children, but how you mother the land, how you mother the cosmos, how you mother, you know, community, how you mother life all around you. And so yeah, there's a series of textiles because Yemonja, she's also the patroness of indigo. So the two works are made with indigo in different ways. One that I did myself and one that Yussef will talk about that we made with dyers in Nigeria. And I guess it's a response to, you know, to another way of honoring different worlds, to be in devotion to the spirit and to create an intimacy with it so that, you know, you can have your own relationship to it and yeah, and receive what is it that you're supposed to receive because spirits speak. So yeah, that's it for me. I mean, what I can say. And also just before Joël, who will talk after, he's also in the film and he shared a lot about, you know, his research. I guess he will talk about it, but that really fed the work and all the political aspect of space colonization and the, you know, that greed that's just everywhere, you know, and the greed now of going to space, of trying to conquer everything. It's like now we've conquered the whole earth. It's not enough. Let us conquer the whole of the universe, you know? So like that energy maybe is the monster that I'm trying to bring in so that we can face it in our world, but also within ourselves, you know, because we're all greedy somewhere, somehow, you know? And sometimes it's very pervasive and, you know, like, ah, no, you know? So yeah, also an invitation to welcome the monster within. That's all.
Oh, thanks so much, Tabita. Amazing introduction. Now we are gonna listen to Yussef. Then we will have a moment for conversation among the four guests that we have and all the comments that you want to bring to the conversation. But now we are gonna listen to Yussef Agbo-Ola, who has collaborated for the Omi Yemola Temple, one of the installations at the exhibition. I'm gonna read some words about your profile, Yussef, before giving you the voice. So Yussef Agbo-Ola is the founder and creative director of Olaniyi Studio, based in London, Ibadan, and the Amazon forest. Born in rural Virginia, in a multi-heritage Nigerian, African-American, and Cherokee household, his work reflects hybrid identities and relationships to different landscapes, ecologies, and cultural rituals. His multidisciplinary architectural and artistic practice is focused on interpreting natural energy systems through interactive experiments that explore the connections between an array of sensory environments, from the biological, anthropological, to the perceptual and microscopic. His aim is to use diverse multidisciplinary research methods and design components to reinterpret local knowledge and its environmental importance cross-culturally. His research outcomes manifest through architectural pavilions, material alchemy, interactive performance, experimental sound design, and conceptual writing. Thanks so much for being with us, Yussef.
Thank you so much for having me. I would first like to start off by thanking all my ancestors for allowing me to be here, thanking Yemoja for also impregnating us with so much of her energy and also just overall protection through the research trip, but also enlightenment in many different ways in relation to just experiencing the ocean in ways that I will never forget. So I just want to do a shout out to them first. Life inspiration. I am running Oleni Studio, and one thing that has been at the foundational kind of pillar of the studio and my artistic practice is how do we connect with the divine through like space? How do we connect with the divine through sacred architecture? How do we connect with the divine through sacred artifacts? So with that inspiration, Tabita, myself, Anya, and Alex, we went on a research trip to Tanzania to basically connect with the waters in a totally different way. The beautiful thing I think about working in a multidisciplinary kind of environment, or in our multidisciplinary kind of environment, was that there was a porosity of energy exchange, but a porosity of like knowledge exchange and expertise exchange that created like a cross-pollination of understanding. We all had our different kind of expertise on what the water is, how water kind of operates, the different spirits that are in water, but also the relationship that we have with organisms that live in water, but also the organisms that we don't necessarily see, like the microscopic organisms that are also in the water. We all had a different kind of understanding of the temperature of the water. We had a different kind of understanding of the currents and the feel and the weight of the water. So there was this like very haptic experience of how we actually connected with water for the work. So through that research trip that we had in Tanzania, we scuba dived in the ocean, but also in salt water, but also scuba dived in fresh water. And through that kind of that immersion in two different types of water, we wanted to connect with the unseen kind of spiritual realm that was there, but also reflect on our own kind of cultural heritage. So I'm Yoruba, and Yemoja is an Orisha, as Tabita has said, in the Yemoja kind of cultural lineage and heritage. And she is the mother of all Orishas, but she's also a representation of fertility. She's a representation of abundance. She's also a representation of the mother, but in many different forms. If you think about water, or you think about the ocean can be, it can have waves that are crashing in, very kind of violent and transformational, but then the ocean can also be very calm. So I think we try to embrace all of the energy and facets of Yemoja by making the temple very much so dynamic and reflective of all the transformational kind of energy that Yemonja represents. So the temple itself is actually designed from the top view to be a water droplet, or almost like a teardrop, an almond shape. And from the side, it also kind of represents the flow of water, the flow of currents that we all experienced while we were scuba diving. The other element that is really important to this work is the fact that each kind of fabric tensile is like, it's similar to this unseen kind of like coral reef idea of like every individual kind of organism makes up these coral reefs. When we scuba dived, we connected a lot with, different coral reefs or different kind of societies or ecosystems that were underwater. And, the idea that just stayed in my mind as I was designing the temple is the idea that every component connects to another one, which makes up the whole. And so if you see the design, if you take one of the fabrics out, it will lose its form and it will lose its tension. Everything is holding the next piece together. And I think that's quite symbolic when we think about our world today and we think about, the roles that we play in the environment, like our own individuality sometimes can be the catalyst for isolation, but actually all of that uniqueness and individuality, all of us are never kind of separated from the whole that is our society, that is always connected together. We're all connected on this earth. So the process also evolved from just the form and the design to also working with local women in Abeokuta in Nigeria, local dyers, that basically they were almost like, I would say, like yeah, they were like the alchemists of different kind of medicinal herbs, but also the local indigo called elu. And they were alchemists in the sense of not just dyeing the fabric, but actually taking the inspiration of Yemonja and transforming it into like symbolic motifs that would also represent this deity, as well as mixing both their symbolic motifs of Yemonja with also kind of scientific motifs of like microscopic organisms as well. So the idea of like combining the scientific, but also combining the spiritual kind of symbolism that's embedded in all of the fabrics was their job, and it was an amazing kind of conversation of collaboration. Some of the motifs, they were like, no, we can't use those because that motif doesn't go with this motif. That actually means something else. This motif is actually for weddings. This motif is actually for when somebody passes away. But then we can morph the shape a little bit of the dot to make it look like this microorganism. It was a cross pollination of, just exchange. So each fabric has a different kind of handmade dyeing system that represents microorganisms, but also represents Yemonja. And so I think this idea of the dichotomy of like bringing these two things together is also reflected in the work as far as scale. Like I wanted to create something that also reflected like the light rays and the light systems. Like when you think about the sun, as Tabita was talking about, or the cosmos or space, the sun is constantly casting shadows through the deep ocean or through the surface layers of the ocean. It's constantly, the sky is constantly having this conversation through light with the surface of the water. So the idea of, playing with light or symbolically representing light in different ways to kind of show the connection of the cosmos with the water was something that is embedded in the temple as well. And on the last level, that symbolic kind of representation of the micro and the macro can be found in the actual knits. If you zoom into the actual knit, so like one panel of the knit, we used a knit chemistry that basically also mimics the anatomy of like microscopic organisms. So we use different knitting techniques and these looping techniques. Again, every loop is an individual loop that is connected to the next one, the same way as you would reference or look at a coral reef. Like the idea again of the individual playing a part in the whole was very much so an inspiration. And the last part is the ritual. Inside the temple, there are 3 different calabashes that represent 3 different moon cycles. One is with coconut flakes, like coconut skin and flesh. The other one has honey, and the last one has indigo. So the idea of creating a sacred space where people can just contemplate the ocean and Yemonja, but also give offerings to Yemonja in a way that allows them to let go and release. Yemonja is water, so the idea of transformation, releasing the heaviness or the destruction, which Tabita talked about earlier, or releasing that inside water. Water is a transformational element. So yeah, I think symbolically, the program of the temple allows people to contemplate on her essence, reflect on her divinity, but also sit, dwell, and be engulfed by her transformational energy as well by doing rituals and libations within the temple.
Thank you, Yussef. Thanks so much. Now we are gonna listen to Joël. Joël Vacheron has written one of an amazing text at the booklet that you can find in the booklet, that you can find in the website. Actually, we are gonna share here the link so you all can access that text. Joël Vacheron is a professor and researcher at the École Cantonale d'Art de Lausanne, where he teaches visual arts and the sociology of media. As an independent journalist, has regularly collaborated on editorial projects in the areas of art and photography. Joël is going to present his work by connecting it with the text that has written for the exhibition booklet. Thanks so much, Joël, for being with us.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Thank you, Tabita, Yussef, Aouefa, tout le monde, everybody that is around. I'm very happy to be part of this discussion. It's been already super inspiring. Always great to listen to such so wise words. So I was really interested, of course, by what has been said, and I think it was really interesting to hear Tabita talking about the way we need to get familiar with the monster, because it's exactly what I did basically in my work. So maybe I'm going to share my screen so so you can see it. Can you see the slide?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So basically, I'm going to do like a presentation mostly of the topics addressed in the text, and also how they relate to my personal project, my research, because I finished recently a PhD that was the main topic was like to unsee spatial imagery. And so basically, I'm going to explain you a little bit what was the topic, but the starting point was, or like during the research, what was very quite surprising, and that was like the way space exploration relates always to references linked to colonization and through like images and metaphor that are very frankly related to this kind of very pivotal moment of history that has not been so enjoyable for everybody. And the fact that this utilization is never really a question for me was really like an issue that I wanted to address. So like this type of quote that like we can see, it's the NASA very official document. And the interesting aspect of this document is also that it was a document that was like putting together like the politic of Reagan, like during the 80s, like regarding how space exploration could be a source of profit through extractions of asteroids and like lunar object. So basically, all these environments was like the starting point of this reflection on how this narrative of colonization are most of the time like used to frame also the way we read imagery and space imagery. And the fact that this image are most of the time seen as neutral, objective, beautiful, linked to the type of signification and interpretation we give them, I think there's something that is a little bit disturbing in the way this image function as a total neutral object. So the beginning of this study was a little bit to question what was the vision that are related to the production and the consumption of spatial imagery, and also to see what kind of violence are embedded in this image. And that's this quote of Donna Haraway has been kind of helpful at the really beginning, like to think about Donna Haraway, especially like he's targeting or focusing on this view from nowhere, that is the view from the scientist that is not very visible and that can speak on the name of everybody, as if it was like the science was the total objectivity that cannot be discussed. This idea like of questioning the violence that are embedded in this image was like a very one of the main observation. And to make this analysis or to do this research, I used a different like visual resources that are very diverse. And the idea was like to show like through this vast scope of imagery, to deconstruct somehow or to unsee space imagery. So that's, I'm not going to go too deep into this analysis, but just to show you like the kind of material I was using. And sadly, I've like to confront the monster, but like during this research that were mostly focused on the American space program, I was always like kind of confronted to what presidents had to say about space colonization and space exploration. And what is very striking in the case of Trump, but is not the only one, is also like this direct link like to the colonial past of America. And of course, like the link that happened very recently also with Musk, that also bring like space exploration to a very new stage, because it has been always mostly states that were allowed to run this type of huge, gigantic projects, even of course that industries, private industries were also involved, but not in the way it is possible now for companies like SpaceX that can really make their own programs. And if I took these images, I didn't want to see their face, it's been enough. But what is clear with, what is interesting with these images is that like Musk wear a t-shirt with the inscription like Occupy Mars, which became his motto and which became like his main target for the future. And that's idea that like, this link between politics and new space industries and this new project of colonization that are fully techno-utopian and somehow a little bit foolish, are like, the question we are going to have to deal with like in the coming years or decades even. And that's exactly the monster that maybe Tabita was mentioning before, because like this is just the beginning. And to see also like I use them so like I use these quotes also to show like the type of level of discussion. Of course this industry, and that also what's actually shocked me quite a lot doing this research, take advantage of existential risk, like this idea of collapse and like having a very dark vision of the future you can see how profitable it is for these industries, you know. Of course, if everything goes really bad on Earth, there's always the option to go to Mars. And for that, we have to build all these spacecraft and rockets that are going to just bring the problems we have on Earth somewhere else. So there's something which is very vicious in the type of circles that are engaged like in new space industries right now. That is, you know, the worse it becomes on Earth, the bigger it can be for the business, basically. And starting from this observation, I was really interested, like, in going deeper, like, in this history and like in this colonial frame that are very like embedded like in space exploration and the material space exploration. I will precise. And of course, there's the link that we can do with the Cold War, the Second World War, the propaganda, Wernher von Braun. Like that, there's a link that is direct to the Nazism. This history is clear. And then like there is all these huge references of the frontier, the new frontier that we see in every type of political discourse, but also in TV series and this kind of stuff that relate, of course, like to the conquest of the West, with everything that it means in terms of destruction of environment and population. But there is one step that is rarely done, is like to link it to the early phase of colonization, and especially the way a certain idea of universal progress was shared, like in the colonial powers in Europe. And this is, I think, the most interesting aspect also to consider, like to track this line, like to the origin, you know. And I think without understanding how the relationship between technology and progress, this idea of universalism linked to a certain idea of white supremacists, let's say it like it is, worked like from the beginning of the colonization. It's difficult to understand the type of narrative that rise like and were very popular like, during the Apollo project, meaning like, for example, like the little plate that is on the lunar module that is like polluting the lunar soil, which says, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 69. We came in peace for all mankind." This quote is like obviously completely inherited from the first phase of colonialism, where colonial powers from Europe were like exploring the world, like for the sake of humanity. So it brings me to the work and the kind invitation of Tabita, which of course was really interesting because of her talent and like and all the topic that she can open, and of course the fact that she lives in French Guinea with this very particular setup of the French space program that is based there, was very interesting in terms of like discussing the colonial impact of space exploration, knowing that I just wanted to do this link that before being in Kourou, the French program was based in the desert in Algeria, like in the Sahara Desert. And when Algeria became independent, they moved to Guinea. So it's a bit like disturbing the way the colonial logic is really like affecting also terrestrial zones, of course. And one thing that is great with the work of Tabita is the way she can also show that there is many ways of exploring the cosmos. And that's, I think it's one of the main points that is not discussed with the material exploration of space, that like this vision is seen as universal, and there is very few way of telling that like actually space can be explored differently. And like going in the same vein like than Kirano, like we can also question this idea of why like a certain type of exploration became so universally shared and seen as the only way to explore space. Of course, as I said, like the work of Tabita, and I've been lucky enough to see some like the films like she did. And at the time I was working on this project, and I think it was very inspirational in the sense that like everything you can do to deconstruct like an idea or like this kind of monster that can be shared amongst space industries, you also need to build something else, like, and to show what are these other way of exploring space. And I think through her works and her films, she does it very subtly and like and in a very engaging way. And I think it's very stimulating to have this this access to other cosmic vision. In the article, in relation to Tabita's work, I was thinking about this text of Jane Young, who used to be an anthropologist, and that relate to this little story of an anthropologist that was doing an interview, like a field research with Inuit, and at the time of the Apollo program, and like asking them what they thought about the fact that like men went on the moon. They laugh at the researchers, saying like, but we go all the time to the moon, like our shaman goes and visit and go there and just to be sure that all the spirits are in a good place, and that we are not polluting them with the problems we have on Earth. And that's very like this type of idea of like, you know, sharing different ways of exploring space. I thought this episode or this story like kind of fit quite well with the work of Tabita. And regarding the film, there's also an aspect that I think very interesting in the way the films are made. It's the type of flow and this kind of circular movement that we are taken in, and I really think it's very stimulating also to enter this universe without like feeling that like there is any type of linearity. There is no need to understand exactly if there is something correct or not. Like it's just about absorbing like these different narratives or this different image, but in a way that is also, I think, very stimulating, and that relates to this text I read from Catherine McKittrick that has a very interesting approach of science and trying to also deconstruct the way science is produced and communicate. And what she says about the images is decided that images are in a loop, and that they kind of create a rhythm, you know, like this kind of way of producing knowledge or consuming art in somehow in the case of the movies. I think it's a very stimulating way of thinking about the work of Tabita. So it's also an aspect that I brought in the discussion. And voila, that was more or less it. I don't know if I've been too long. Hope not.
It was great, Joel. Thanks so much. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it brings a lot of ideas for the next moment of conversation. Very, very appreciated. Now we are gonna jump with Aouefa, the last intervention now, before we open up the space for the conversation. Aouefa Amoussouvi is a research scientist based in Berlin, Germany. She is currently researching the history and alternative narratives of science through the prism and of intersectional feminines and coloniality. She's especially interested in exploring how technology creates opportunities as well as ethical challenges within Western and non-Western contexts. Aouefa is going to introduce pieces of her research by linking to the exhibition. Thanks so much for being with us, Aouefa.
Yeah, first I would like to thank, I'm like all the organizer, Tabita and Yussef. I would like to thank you for the invitation. And I just want to say that can you share, can you see my screen first?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sharing my screen, but I don't see you anymore. So please, when I'm coming closer to the 10 minutes, maybe you can scream. So I can, come to an end for my presentation. So the title of my talk today is Ecologies After the Doors of No Return. That's the same title of the presentation I gave in Berlin this summer as part of the accompanying program for the OMI exhibition of Tabita and Yussef in Berlin at the Shared Stiftung. And in summer, I gave a longer talk, and for today, I kept the same title, but it will be like a shorter presentation. And I would like to first come with the concept of the doors of no return. I hope my slide will move. Yes. So for example, like here you see a door of no return on the Gorée Island in Senegal. And this door is in the house of the slave on the Gorée Island. And so this is, for example, like on the right, one image of this of one part of this house of the slave. And so you have to imagine that the slave, African enslaved people taken on the continent were gathered in this house before to be put on boats and before to cross the Atlantic and to be brought to America to work on plantation. So once people were going through those doors, this one, for example, they were put on the boat. Some people were trying to escape, and usually that they would fall in the water, and because they would have chains, they would die. And passing this door meant, being enslaved or dying in the water, from the boat, in the transportation. But this door meant no return. And you can see one monument here, also called a door of no return in Ouidah, a city on the coast of Benin. And this monument is about 20 kilometers away from Heve, a small village where my father is from. And so you have to imagine that on the coast of Africa, there were, and sometimes also still now, some of those doors are still located, and there were a frontier between a passage between Africa and America. One also have to, and for me the door is of course like a tangible object, a tangible architectural object on the coast, but it's also a temporary mark of the colonial, of the beginning of the colonial time. And when we think about temporality, colonization meant extraction from people and from and from the earth, from the environment. And today, also looking at temporality, we cannot go back in time. So those doors are also, a temporary mark for climate change, for post-colonial socio-political constructs, and where my lecture will become also personal. My lecture will become also personal, and for this I would like to introduce Sarah Bartman. Sarah Bartman is a woman from southern Africa, and she became very famous because she was very talented as a dancer, also as a musician. And she was brought from South Africa to Europe and toured in Europe, dancing and singing and playing music in usually very often also in very she was famous on this time. What is quite sad is that in this time there was also like this drive in the scientific community of creating hierarchy and categories of everything. So animal, plant, stones, everything were being put in boxes. But not only the boxes was important, but also like creating a hierarchy. It was also the time where hierarchy were being a model of hierarchy were being developed, and sadly, Black people were seen as a missing link between the human and animals. So one French scientist, I'm sorry that my slides seem to not be shown, but one French scientist, Georges Cuvier, heard about Sarah Bartman and even hired her from her manager to make measure about her body. And even more sadly, after her death, Georges Cuvier even were able to acquire her corpse, and her corpse were a skeleton were being put in display in the Museum of Mankind in France for over 160 years before it was being brought back to South Africa. So you hear about the violence of this story. What is still violence is that many people don't know about this story. And Georges Cuvier in France is still seen as a very famous, smart scientist. So if you walk in the very center of Paris, you can, for example, see a fontaine, which is named after him. There's also like a street named after him. There's also like a university building named after him, where I studied for 3 years when I was a student myself in biology and physics. And also I knew about the story of Sarah Bartman, and I think that I even watched a movie about her life. It took me years after I left university to realize that my body was sitting in the same geography, in the same location where this woman has been standing. But in my case, I was sitting and hearing to a lecture, and in her case, she would stand in the amphitheater as an object, as an animal. So in my I went on doing a PhD in biophysics, and during my PhD, I basically became more and more skeptical about the pseudo-objectivity that natural science was being sold to me in academia. And I basically thought about the idea of ask question how objective is really science, natural science, academia, and if we look at the violent, racist, patriarchal history of natural science, how can it be that now it can be objective? So I research on the history of science. On one side, I was looking for people who look like me, maybe like more female and people of color. I was looking at narrative of history of science coming from non-Western European places. And and with the time, my long-term project became I would say research through history, but it also became artistic and curatorial practice. Since I was coming from biophysics, I was very interested in the concept of technology, and so I first was very interested in looking at the definition. When we talk about technology, what are we talking about exactly, and are we on the same page? So if we look at technology, it's come from the Greek techne, which means art, skill, craft, and logia, which means science. So technology is the science of craft. And it's a tool, a process, or state of knowledge that solve a problem or extend human capabilities. So technology can be a pen because it helps us to write. It's also like the recipe, maybe to make a paper. It can be a microscope. It might be also like the recipe to create medicine. But all of those four items are example of technology, and some are quite modern and recent. For example, like a microscope, electronic microscope. But some are very ancient, like the recipe to make paper. And when we think of digital technology, what is digital? Digital comes from the Latin digitus, and it means fingers. And why? It's because our hands are basically like the oldest tool that human has been using to count faster. And we count on a base of 10 because we have 10 fingers. We would have less finger, we would have our standard of counting would be like another number. So basically like a digital technology is a technology based on number, but I was also interesting to think that digital technology is also a technology which is based on our hands, on our fingers. So we can also think that digital technology are embodied technologies. And so then comes the question, can we reconsider some ancient tradition, ancient methodology as technological? And I would like now for my last minute to taking into account this definition and also like this the story of Sarah Bartman, and I would like to present few projects I've been doing the last few years. Lately, I was commissioned to do a podcast series for the Berlin Museum, the Humboldt Forum. It's called Decolonial Ecologies, and in this podcast, I invited I had 5 guests. Some were artists, writer, or scientists. But the idea was to reflect on this concept of technology and to bring people of color, queer people, but not only like people of color, queer people, but decolonial, queer perspective, non-capitalist perspective on on the concept of ecology. Another project was also partially a podcast project, but also like installation project, was my project Castle of Cross Destiny with 2 friends of collaborator. And one of the chapter of this project was focusing on raw cacao. I know that Tabita has been working with raw cacao for many years. And in my practice, I see raw cacao as a technology of technological tools. On one side, the bean of cacao and the cacao matter enable me to track neocolonialist coloniality in a map in the world. How it moves, the move of the cacao tree, but also the move of the cacao beans and cacao matter, unable to track capitalism and coloniality in nowadays. But I'm also very interested in the chemistry of the cacao. The molecule of the active molecule of cacao that can be seen as a non-human or post-human of more than human entities. And many of the cacao molecule, my favorite is anandamide, coming from ananda, which means bliss in Sanskrit. And the molecule anandamide is a molecule that activates in you a feeling of bliss, of joy. So, for example, like here you see like one tarot card of one art project that asks you question about joy, about politic of bliss, and initiate a dialogue between like the human that will read this card and the non-human entity of the molecule of raw cacao. For 2 years, I was running a small art space in Berlin, TIR, the Institute of Enotic Research. One of the multiple months project was Aurora, a platform on ecology, interdependence, and mutual aid. And it was a series of workshops and installation by activists, artists, scientists about the concept of interdependence and mutual aid. Here I will read a quote from Lynn Margulis. Life did not take over the world by combat, but by networking. And in the evolution of Darwin, one of the drive of evolution was competition. And still nowadays, it's very well accepted that competition drive progress, drive evolution. Lynn Margulis is the scientist, the biologist who sadly already passed, who proves scientifically that networking and collaboration actually drive evolution sometime. Not always, but sometime. And as much as competition can be something that drive progress, actually collaboration is also something that drive novelty and innovation in biology. So for example, like here, up you see like a picture by the work by Xiaofei Dertz, who works a lot about the concept, the idea of the alien. And down you see a work by Romuald Kreschel, Microclimate. He built a greenhouse inside the art space. He filled this greenhouse with a lot of plants. There was actually like only space for 2 persons to sit in this greenhouse, and he was conducting interview with people who could reserve a spot about their personal experience of climate change. One last project I'm still working on is called The Root of Our Hands, Deep as Revolt, Untangled Coloniality of the Green. It's a multiple-month project initiated by the 9B Lab in Berlin, which investigates the colonial history of the green movement, and also asking the question why sometimes many people of color doesn't recognize themselves in some green action. It's a project which looks at history. Saskia Kopshal, one of the founders of the Mengilam, is doing a PhD about the Lebensreform, the life reform movement in Germany, which is like basically like the beginning of the grief movement in Germany, and look at how this green movement has been linked with the Nazi regime, at least in Germany, and how still nowadays there is a continuity of some narrative that partially result to the fact that non-white people in Germany, at least, might not feel welcome by some green activism, action, and program. But it's also a project that look at historical archive, but also it's mostly a culture and art project. Therefore, we did an exhibition, for example, here in Berlin last winter. Here's the work of Anna Duki Jordan, who basically was creating a dialogue and breaking the binary between technology and analog, between robots, but also like the real microbes and fishes in the ocean. And and she's working on the concept of artificial stupidity, when nowadays everybody is working and seeing maybe like the future and progress on a lot of digital tools. She actually like tried to remind us that sometimes analog methods are actually like very, very old and very, very efficient, and that digitality doesn't always mean progress. We also had 3 days in a theater with talks by scientists, performances, concerts. And so here you can see Duran Chavez, Zina Zaroviva, and Laji Kone. For example, like Laji Kone is a dancer, choreographer, but also an urban farmer in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso. And all these people were basically creating a presence and reminding us that Black people, queer people, people of color are also present and creating knowledge, and also present in the scientific discourse and community of around ecology. And I didn't wanted to talk about, but I just want to show it. I'm working a lot with a workshop. I'm always trying to create interactive setting to interact with people and reflecting and creating together. And I'm using regularly this gradient, this model, developed by Grada Kilomba and Paul Gilroy. And that give 5 different stages in which our psyche, our ego is when we start to deconstruct our own colonial racism, and I'm just showing this slide because I like Tabita, who says that we have to welcome the monster. And sometimes we don't know how to do this. At least I don't always know how to deconstruct. And I like this model because it helped me, and usually like it's a very good beginning of conversation with people. When we look at maybe one situation, one work, and we feel that there's something triggering with this, but we don't really know how to initiate a conversation, how to start to deconstruct ourselves. And and I found this model helpful. So I'm done, and it's already late.
No, thank you again, Aouefa. It's been an amazing trip navigating your work and your ideas. Now we can have this space for speaking among us. I think Joël, Aouefa, you have some questions that you want to share with us or among you, and we can contribute. Please, the listeners, also feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we can incorporate them into the conversation. And thank you all for such an amazing presentations. It has been super cool. Thank you.
I don't know. Shall we do like a round of questions between us? That's the idea.
Yeah. That's the idea. If you have particular questions you want to raise, I can start otherwise because I have some notes. But I think you can activate better.
No, start, please.
Connections.
No, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So while listening to you both lately, and definitely in connection with propositions by Tabita, I think there is definitely kind of connection about the colonization of the digital technologies that Aouefa is proposing. That is kind of in the same way to the works towards a pluriversal vision of the cosmos that you bring on your text as well, Joël. And my question could be, how or to what extent do you think that those digital technologies can be emancipated when...
Hello.
Oh, can you hear us, Robert? Oh, sorry. Yes? Okay. I continue. My question is about once we have formulated those ideas, and we can envision those, that pluriversality that is needed. How do you think we can actually emancipate the certain kind of devices and infrastructure that we are using from this dependence of the economical model that we are immersed into, thinking of the complexity that certain kind of infrastructures are embedded into? Do you think we can actually go through a process of decolonization of these technologies, digital technologies, or it's more about articulating other ways, looking towards other directions, and formulating different spaces for interaction? Because for instance, I put the example, very clear one, that we are trying to test within Organismo to explore a digital infrastructure that is starting to emancipate from the big techs, and we are using an infrastructure that definitely is not counting with all the tools that we need to use. So we are kind of inhabiting incoherence in somehow, because we are using a tool that is emancipated, but we are opening it through the browser that is Chrome, for instance. So we know that it's step by step, but apparently we wonder, is it possible to liberate those tools, or should we reconsider not only the infrastructure, the tools, the technology, but the proper conceptualization of how we articulate ourselves through or mediated by those technologies?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question because I dropped out, so I will leave anybody else answer. Sorry about this.
It was you. We heard us out, but we didn't know where it was coming from. I was well, synthesizing and trying to synthesize. The question is about, is it possible to emancipate our infrastructures, or the infrastructure that we are using right now, nowadays, as we are very into a system that is dependent of many different layers. For example, right now, today, Trump re-elected as president, and we saw how all the big tech directors, the congratulations, no? So somehow we are kind of dependent on those others. And the question is about, is it possible to emancipate those tools, or do we need to look towards other spaces of technology that have been has not been taken into consideration, but definitely is gonna change our way of interacting by the mediation of these interfaces that we are used to be using nowadays.
The master's tool will not dismantle the master's house, said someone very wise. Audre Lorde. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's about, I mean, everybody has their own, opinions, it depends. But for me, it's about understanding that we're complicit to a system of extraction, violence, domination, surveillance, and that we're part of it, and that what we do, like, feeds it. And then we all have a choice, do we want to be a part of it? How, to which extent? Is it a conscious, part of it? Is it just, okay, because it's there and I like it, and without trying to understand, like, the consequences it has, like, politically, economically, environmentally, But then it's very hard indeed to not engage in it. I mean, that you can, some people are doing it, but then it's a personal choice. But then if you choose to engage, like, how do you engage? Can one engage critically? Yes, does it stop the consequences, of one's engagement? Maybe not, but at least creating an awareness, and potentially those who have the tools, the capacity to try and even think of maybe other ways to connect. I mean, there's many different technologies out there, that are available, and some better, some worse, depending on our willingness to compromise, comfort, maybe, because at the end of it, or maybe at the beginning of it, it's always those technologies are bringing, like, a certain level of comfort, to our lives, and how much discomfort are we willing to face? And then the comfort and discomfort for whom, like, it's all a matter of privilege and who we are talking about. Anyhow, I mean, you got my point. So yeah, I don't know what.
But if I should go like in this direction, and like asking you a question, Yussef and Tabita, I have the feeling that like in your practice, you actually you engage in a process of like questioning technology through a lot of discussion with people also. How, like you like through your work, you engage like in a discussion about, like, it's not deconstructing, but like learning how people like use technology that are like not only material, it can be very simple thing. But do you feel that you like, because it was one of my question, what is the part of like the encounters and engaging like a discussion with people about the way they use things in your works, both of them, of you?
Okay, I don't know if that's gonna answer the question, but for me, I feel like for the last 10 years, maybe I've made works about technology, trying to really like dive into the structure of it, like politically, economically, ecologically, like what does it do to do a click? Like what does, like who pays for it, who benefits from it, who pays, who is exploited by it, like how, like all the system in so many different dimensions, of like the structural and even spiritual consequences of us being in this kind of economy, and society that's so reliant and dependent on digital technologies, you know. But in a way, by doing so, like similarly looking at other type of technology, as I mentioned, you know, whether it's like, you know, divination, or there's so many ways to receive information, so many other systems of information and communication technology that are out there, you know, and seeing the relationship to different systems. And maybe now I'm in a place where, you know, I started, you know, kind of shifting my life, becoming a farmer, taking care of the land and trying to extract myself, not fully, look, I'm still here on Zoom, you know, but as much as I can as of now, you know, shifting a bit my practice from screen-based to more hands-on, and I can make like pottery, you know, it's like, I'm shifting because maybe my values and my understanding of where I want to put my energy has shifted a bit, you know? So I really think it's about one's choice. And for sure, it was fed by all the conversation I had with people, all the elders I talked to, all the, yeah, and my own journey, you know, and all like following the root of my own suffering and understanding, oh, maybe like this whole system that we're in is also a cause or a consequence, or both ways, you know, and how can we, from disconnection, find that connection that we're all seeking, you know. And I think maybe digital communities and technology, the answer, or there's one answer, you know, an easy answer to the isolation and the yearning that people have for connection, but maybe it's not that fertile, you know, and it leaves you maybe more isolated. So there's other ways, maybe harder ways, because it's way more harder to build community and to tend to, you know, the thing than to talk about it. But, you know, it's a challenge we're willing to try, you know, to take on.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is very interesting because there is a point that perhaps it's like how these kind of technologies, how we as humans has been shaping these kind of technologies, but at the same time, how these kind of technologies have been shaping our societies. And now is the time to kind of give back technologies to the people to be able to reactivate them or to recover them, to transform how it has been manipulating us, right? No, so the problem is not with the technology in itself, but with what humans have been doing with those kind of technologies, and should be the way back. No, so it's very inspiring how you say, no, how to extract yourself from that entanglement and be able to come back by other interrelations that you have been able to explore by being outside, no, and bring that inspiration to put them in play in other order of dependencies.
Right. I feel it's both ways, you know, we have the technologies we have today because of the people we are today, you know, like the world that we live in is wounded, like we're all so wounded, you know. So like a lot of what we create comes out of, you know, fear, anger, resentment, the trauma that we carry, like all of this aching that we have, and like the violence that we were bred into, that we witnessed around us, like that's what lives in us. So what's going to come out of us, it's fed by this. So if we don't, okay, no, that is very non-politically correct, but well, that is my opinion. Like it's a inner shift, you know, but then also a collective shift. But like as long as we don't change the people that we are, we won't change the technology that we have, you know.
We have two questions in the chat. I don't want to interrupt the, what do you say? Hilos de pensamientos. We tend to say in Spanish, like thoughts. So when you are ready and you want to give some space for the people that is listening, I can read them loud, or where you can access them. But not, I don't know if the audience can read the chat.
You
so
can read
perhaps
it.
You can read it? Yeah, you read it. Me? Okay, I go. Christian is asking how to connect the microorganisms and else, among brackets, and the macro architecture and else, while traditional knowledge modernize.
What was the question? Can you repeat the question?
Micro
Sure.
and the macro.
Yes.
How to connect the micro and the macro.
In relation to the temple, how do we connect them, or just in general? In general?
Do
In
you
general.
wanna, Cristiano, jump in to clarify, or
Yeah.
should I? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your presentations. Well, congratulations. So my question is how to connect these micro worlds with the macro architecture and the macro stuff while talking with ancient knowledge and indigenous knowledge. So how do you piece all these things together, paying the respect to every being in their own place?
I would say right now, I'm still trying to figure that out, honestly. I think it's a life kind of journey, you know, but I think even in relation to the other questions that were asked, I mean, I've done a lot of listening, you know, to different medicine men and medicine women in different places. And I think like just listening to their stories, I mean, it really kind of opened my mind to how connected things are, you know? And so I spent a lot of time under the microscope, but I also spend a lot of time um, in conversation, you know, with different plants, being open enough to just listen and observe like different plants, different trees, different kind of systems, that the water, the river, the sound of water, all of these things. I feel like there's so much that the outward environment is trying to communicate to us if we just slow down and listen. So I think from a lot of observation, my main goal is to basically bring the unseen seen. And I feel like with humans, you know, the eyes are so important in relation to, if you don't see it, sometimes you don't believe it. Like there's so many organisms like on this phone, on this book, on our hands, all over us, but we don't really get a chance to see those microorganisms or get to see that microscopic world with our eyes, you know? So I think for me, like I'm really enthused and inspired by a lifetime journey of just making the micro and the small bigger, you know? So then that way we can experience it, walk inside of it, reverence it, almost like acting as a, you know, a representative in a way for the microscopic kind of realm, you know, like just making it bigger so it can be experienced. And then from there, that is like the first layer of like, let's say the architectural structure and form. But I feel like I'm also working with layers the same way the earth kind of has all of these layers, these dynamic kind of systems. And then from there, I'm like listening again to like some shamans or like local dyers. I'm listening and then to like the indigenous knowledge. And sometimes the microscopic forms in the microscopic realms is already kind of connected to their stories. You know, they kind of give meaning to like these forms and shapes. So I feel like it's really it's a journey of reformulating my own mental ecology and the way that I relate and connect to the environment, also the studio as well. But we haven't figured it all out yet, you know? I'm still questioning in each project how exactly to connect the microscopic realm, the macro, and indigenous knowledge, you know?
All right. Thank you.
Um,
Okay, perhaps the last question, as we are over time. Would you have time for the last one? And it could be exhausting, the screens and yeah, okay. So Merlina is typing. I would like first to thank you very much for sharing. Secondly, I would like to ask, how do you feel the relation of your work in the context of the museum and the city? And if you feel that institutions actually empower your intentions or can empower?
I think we feel very differently about that. So I guess we can have two different kind of answers, I guess.
That's a tricky question to ask on a museum Zoom, my friend.
This is,
Right.
yeah, feel free. No one is gonna, judge,
Yeah,
and no one is
no
gonna
one is
remove the
gonna
installation at all.
sure. Yeah, for me, it's a bit, there's an unease sometimes, that's why I usually don't go to openings, things like this, I'm a bit low key, There's a part of me that feel like it doesn't make sense, but then at the same time, like I have to honor, the support, that without the institution, without the museum, like probably the work wouldn't be there, or at least not in this form for sure, in a different form. So yeah, I guess it's about being complicit. It's the same conversation with the technology. You're complicit because what, the role museums play or have played historically, it's also a certain lineage, of saying what is legitimate, like what belongs to history, what can enter the museum, what cannot, like who will be remembered in a way in the history books. So you can't take that lightly, especially, in an art context, traditionally, maybe art was, really more devotional, or it was functional for, offered for the divine, for like a temple, for rituals, and maybe there's plenty also for decoration, for home, for all sorts, of artistic function. But the fact of like capturing art from the everyday, put it in a white place, having to pay a ticket, to go see, it became an industry, and fair enough. It serves like a lot of people, and I guess gives a lot of jobs, to myself included. But yeah, I try, I want to remain critical as far as I can, even if I'm fully in it, like I'm completely, or I have been swallowed. I tried to escape by retiring, going to the forest to become a farmer. It didn't work out, So now it's like, how can I participate in a way that is, supporting the real thing for me, at least for me, not just feeding like recognition, validation, or those sort of things, but like, like helping me supporting a vision that I have, So that's where I sit, and now I'm much more at peace, and feeling that, feeling really grateful, but still remaining a space to be critical. Basically, that's what I can say.
Yeah, I think you should be remembered forever and ever. I think that's a nice thing, because I think you're saying stuff, your work, it's okay.
Okay, we have very different meaning. He's all about legacy. I'm not about legacy.
Okay. So basically, I think that I think the museum serves an interesting kind of place. And I think it's great that new voices are embedding themselves in the museum kind of lineage and history and all of those things. But yeah, I would also say, like, for me, I guess with other kind of aspects of the studio work and the personal kind of work that I'm doing now with making a lot of temples or contemplation spaces, like the idea of the temple is actually like it's to be shown in a museum, that's one kind of element, but actually the temples are made to be like left in the forest or left in a desert or left in kind of like a place where the environment can completely take over the temple plants and trees can grow within inside. You have snakes living inside. You have all of these kind of organisms that basically take over or the temple in a way. So for me, the end goal is not like the pristineness of like just having it in a museum in a way. That's not kind of the end life. Like after after the show, I think it's nice to have these, well, in my personal works, all of the temples kind of decay, you know, over time, or are embedded in an outdoor environment and create micro ecosystems. So in that sense, the museum is great for a certain context and explanation of these different ideas, and also in connection to like having people experience the micro realm on a different scale. But for me, the end result is not the program of people visiting an artwork or a temple in a museum, you know? I would like for people to connect with the non-human, with the non-human world within the temple and the outdoor environment. So that's kind of my take on the museum. But I like museums, and I think they serve a purpose, you know, and it's great, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess they are.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't want to make an uncomfortable question, but thank you very much for answering.
I think we
Discomfort
all,
is the way.
I think we all are aware that no, I'm here. That is why we are also here to problematize our present times. And I think it's fantastic that we can be in it. And even though have these conversations, that's if we would be all like aligned with everything that was not the purpose. But thanks so much for replying. Thanks so much for being with us. It's been fascinating to listen to you at the same time, one conversation after the other, and the relationship between your ideas from different perspectives, backgrounds as well. And I think, at least for us as a group, a study group, is going to be incredibly inspiring, and we are going to be coming back to this conversation for at least until June, definitely. And to everyone that is listening, please come to the exhibition at the museum. But it's another environment, and I think we should also embrace that. No, it's the kind of natural environment that we have in a city like this one. It's near also to different spots. Yeah, well, thanks so much, and looking
Thank you
forward
very much.
looking forward to keep the conversation going.
Merci Joël, merci Aouefa. Thank you all. Blessings.
Muchas gracias.
And come
Que tengas bonita noche.
together.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.